Good day to you, it's Marty Westley, and I'm very glad to have you on this journey that we are taking to search for the truth. So I hope that you will be blessed. Good day to you, it's Marty Westley back again to continue with our lectures, and today we're talking about the Feast of Purim. I like to do this on Purim because it establishes Yeshua's resurrection. And so today we'll start with here. All scriptures used are from the Hebrew Bible, the Old King James, Dake's Annotated Reference Bible, and eSword. Any italics, underline, brackets and words made bold have been added, including all the English and Greek names for God, the Lord, Jesus, and Christ changed into the original Hebrew. And you will see that their names like Mary are changed into her original name. Purim is celebrated as a memorial on the 14th of Adar, which is the 28th of Feb, the end of the religious year. Purim as a feast started 484 BC on the 14th of Adar, when all the Jews in Persia or Iran were preserved from extermination through Esther. She was queen of Persia, and King Ahasuerus made a great feast. This wasn't an eating feast, it was a 180-day wine feast. The nobles and all the princes were being entertained, but the purpose of the banquet was to prepare for the great battle against Greece. And at the end of the banquet, the king proclaimed a 7-day banquet also for the people of Shushan, from the 9th of Nissan to the 15th of Nissan. Now, when you look at Nissan, you will also see that that was speaking about that week of Pesach, because if it's on the 9th of Nissan to the 15th of Nissan. And so all Jews are commanded to keep the feast of Pesach. And so here's a little bit of a glitch here. Haman was the chief instigator of this banquet to cause Israel to sin by avoiding the obligations and observance of Passover as declared by Yahweh. The king commanded Queen Vashti to appear before his men to display her beauty. He must have been near intoxicated to give such a command. I believe that meant she was to be scantily dressed, and she rightly refused to come. And so she fell from favor, and because of her disobedience, a new law was instituted. And there are some people that are still adhering to that law. You'll find, for instance, that in some countries, the wives are not allowed to sleep on the bed. The husband sleeps on the bed, and the wives sleep on a mat in front of the bed. You know, for the husband to really rule and reign as a king in the house. Esther 1:20, letters were sent out into the nation, to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and all the wives shall give honor to their husbands. And the Hebrew is sarar, and it means exercise dominion, make self a prince, rule. In other words, to show himself as the boss in the house. To rule, as in Adam, is called shalat, and it means to govern, rule, to reign, and have dominion. It's a different kind of rule. So a new queen was sought for the king. And all the most beautiful virgins of the land were brought to the capital and eventually Esther was chosen by the king to be his queen. She was a beautiful Hebrew orphan, raised by her cousin Mordecai, and he was from the tribe of Benjamin. Benjaminites were mostly left-handed, trained to use both hands in warfare. They were mighty warriors, and Mordecai did not want people to know about Esther's Hebrew background. Her real name was Hadassah, and the root is Hadass, myrtle. She was called Esther, a star, and the root of it is Satar, and it means concealed. In the book of Esther, Yahweh's name is also concealed. Then one day, it so happened that Mordecai overheard two royal servants plotting to kill the king. So he informed Esther, and she informed the king. And after the truth was established, they were hanged. Mordecai was not rewarded, but his name was written in the book of records of the Chronicles. During this time, a man called Haman, an Agagite, a descendant of Amalek or Esau, was advanced to the position of prime minister, and a decree went forth that all must bow before Haman when he came into their presence. But Mordecai refused to bow before him. Deuteronomy 25:17-18 says, "Remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way when you were come forth out of Egypt, how he met thee by the way, and smote the hindmost of thee, even all that were feeble behind thee, when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not Elohim." No respect. Amalek was a predator. He always went for the weakest, the stragglers. And Romans 9:13 says, "As is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated." Esau despised his firstborn rights, sold it for a plate of food. And the firstborn sons were to rule the tribe, to be a priest for the tribe, and to inherit the double portion of the family inheritance. Yahweh looked into the future and saw what the descendants of Esau would do to his people. Some Edomites tried to stop Nehemiah from building the wall of Jerusalem. He saw what Herod and Agrippa did to Yeshua. They were all Edomites. So Haman had gallows built for Mordecai because he hated the Jews and he hated Mordecai. Then it so happened that when Haman went to see the king to advise him that the time came for Mordecai's execution, that the king advised him to honor Mordecai instead. Why? It so happened that the previous night the king's sleep was troubled, and he ordered his servants to bring the book of the records of the Chronicles and to read it to him. And they read the account of Mordecai's brave deed, how he saved the king's life. So when Haman appeared before him, the king ordered that Mordecai be honored before the entire nation. And Haman had to lead Mordecai on his own horse through the city. Then Haman hated the Jews even more and planned the extermination of the Jews in Persia. Through very clever manipulation, lies and deceit, Haman succeeded to persuade the king to give his consent for the extermination of all the Jews from India to Ethiopia in the 127 provinces of Persia. The decree was issued by Haman on the 13th of Nissan. Esther 4:12. The king did not know that his own queen was a Jew. From here we all know the story of how Esther was told by Mordecai, "And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" She came to the kingdom for such a time as this, and she called on the Jews to fast and pray with her for 3 days. On the 3rd day, she went into the presence of the king, uninvited, which could mean instant death. But Esther found favor with the king. He stretched out his scepter towards her for her request. Esther 5:2-5 says, "And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him." Then the king said, "Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther has said." And so the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, "What is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed." Then answered Esther and said, "My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said." Queen Esther called a fast from the 14th of Nissan to the 17th of Nissan, the exact 3 days and nights that Yeshua spent in the tomb until his resurrection. On the same date, Judas Iscariot made a pact with the chief priests in Jerusalem to betray Yeshua. Haman used lots to determine the most favorite month and day for the extermination of the Hebrew people, and the lots fell on the 14th of Adar. Esther's first banquet of wine occurred on the day she issued the invitation, although she was still fasting. Therefore she requested the king and Haman to attend a second banquet on the 17th of Nissan, so that she could partake of the meal. It says the same day the tomb of Yeshua was found empty. The new day, Sunday the 18th, began just after Yeshua was resurrected on the night of the 17th of Nissan, when it was still the Sabbath. Matthew 28:1-7 says, "In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn towards the first day of the week," in other words, before it became dark, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of Yahweh descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. His countenance was like lightning, and his raiment white as snow. And for fear of him the keepers did shake, and became as dead men. In other words, they were unconscious. And the angel answered and said unto the woman, "Fear not ye, for I know that you seek Yeshua, which was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen, as he said. Come see the place where the Lord lay, and go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead. And behold, he goeth before you into Galilee. There shall ye see him. Lo, I have told you." Then we go to Esther 7, from 1-8. So the king and Haman came to banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, "What is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom." Then Esther the queen answered and said, "If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. And then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, Who is he, and where is he, that durst presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, The adversary and enemy is the wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, Will he force the queen also before me in this house? And as the word went out of the king's mouth, they, his servants, covered Haman's face. Through Esther, the king granted the Jews the right to defend themselves on that day. Why did he do that? Because the king could not revoke the law. It couldn't be done. But he gave the Jews the right to defend themselves on that day, which was fine. They became victorious. They smote all the enemies, those who hated them. And so the planned disaster became an occasion for great joy. Haman and his 10 sons were killed on the gallows prepared for Mordecai on the 17th of Nissan. This was the salvation of Yahweh's chosen people at that time. And after Yeshua's crucifixion, he was in the tomb for 3 full nights and 3 full days, and the tomb was empty on the evening of the closing of the Sabbath on the 17th of Nissan. He was risen. After 430 years of slavery, Israel was delivered when they went through the Red Sea on the 17th of Nissan. The 17th of Nissan, Kristallnacht, began in Germany when they destroyed all the Jewish shops, homes and synagogues in 1938. On this day, the 17th of Nissan, 1953, when the infamous trial was to begin in Russia of the Jewish doctors that were falsely accused by Stalin of trying to overthrow his regime, he died suddenly on the 13th of Nissan, and the charges were dropped. The 17th of Nissan, the Berlin Wall came down on that day in 1989. Yahweh's name is not mentioned in Esther, but his name is hidden, and this is why it is called the Megillah, to reveal. In the Hebrew Bible we see an acrostic in who is he and where is he, and we see the word Aheye, I am, and also Yahweh. This availeth me nothing. So we'll have a look at it in the Hebrew. Esther 5:13 says. So this one you've got to read from the left to the right. And it says, V'chol ze enenu shorer li b'chol et. And then you will see the Hebrew letters are underlined, and it's first the Yod, the second last word, and then right next to it you have the Hey, and the word next to that one you have the Vav, and the first word you have the Hey. So it is Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Here you have the hidden name of Yahweh. And Esther 7:5 says, this one you've got to read from the right to the left. And it says, Huzeh ve'ezehu, who is he and where is he? So the first word ends with an aleph, and the second word ends with a hey, and the third word ends with a yod, and the second last word you have the hey. So here you have a hey, I am. Hallelujah. And this is why I wanted to do this, because I don't think that Israel expected Yahweh to rise from the grave on the 17th, on the Sabbath. It was still the Sabbath. And so here we have the man that is going to, again, to cause salvation for Israel. He rose again on the same day when Israel was saved from destruction. And so we know that he will come again to save Israel from destruction. Amen, amen. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I know it's part of history of Israel, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you did too. See you next time. Mari Wesley signing off. Shalom. Thank you for joining me today on today's journey. I hope you will join me again next time. So, shalom for today until I see you again.